still hadn't totally been able to see the full spectrum, the entire landscape of my mother. And I, at the time, wasn't sure she was doing this intentionally, but what she does is she gives my daughter the impression that I'm not doing what I'm doing. Daughter gets argumentative with me and will start asking questions, and that's where sort of the disrespect kind of creeps in. And so right away, I sent my mom a message and I was like, hey, you know what the boundaries are. You don't need to be getting involved in this. If you would like to pay for the tuition, you can do that. But otherwise, please mind your own business. I am her parent and I am dealing with this. Whatever you think you're going to do, you're not going to do. So please stop. And she still didn't. And she goes and she gossips, starts sharing things from a place of where she has no idea what's actually going on. This is what she always does. This is why gossip is witchcraft. This is why gossip is spell work. Because it creates confusion. And God is not a God of confusion. The devil authors confusion. And when you kind of create disruption in another household, in another family, because you're trying to skew the perception of other people, whether it's just for self-validation or whatever it is, and all narcissists do this, that's the whole idea behind flying monkeys. It's all selfishness. It's all about self-validation. Having just not had the outcome that she wanted through the grandparent legal visitation and me still holding up that boundary and her having anything that she could leverage over my head, she didn't have that anymore. A panic within them when they're not doing the work. Any narcissist. And of course, then when I say something to her, she gets defensive. But it's like, you're the one who's disrespecting my boundaries again. And it's a frustrating thing to deal with, especially when a grown woman is using a child as a wedge to create destruction in your home. 42-year-old adult. It's like, invest in yourself, invest in hobbies, your church, your marriage. You know what I mean? Like, please stop. Really fell into a depression, my daughter. It was quite the struggle to get her remotivated again. And I knew it was going to be. I was still trying to keep her motivated in terms of like putting additional rules in. If you're not going to go to school, if you're not going to enroll in the high school over here, then here's the rules around that. You're going to have to work 40 hours a week and you're going to pay rent. You're going to have to pay for your phone. You're going to have to pay for the credit card bill of the things that you've purchased. Like, they're the things that I've purchased for you, all of those things, to create that incentive for her to at least enroll in the school or an online school. I really just wanted to see her not lose complete direction. That was really my goal. I knew it was going to take a while for her to reinvest in something, anything, whether it was just going to college courses. And I just kept presenting her with things, and hoping something would inspire her to get invested in that. And she started spending a lot more time with her boyfriend. And I like her boyfriend. Started to notice just a little bit of that slippery slope of where we were at before. A little reminiscent of when she was backsliding before. And so I started putting some additional rules in with her boyfriend and him being at our house. And, she had slept over his dad's house a couple times, which she already knows I'm not okay with. And see, here's the interesting part. It's really not difficult with the child. It's difficult with the adults who enable the child. To communicate with Jake's parents about, I think originally I asked them if they would sit down with Melina and Jake and, all of us kind of sit down together and like create some rules and some boundaries around their relationship and they were kind of acting like a married couple right off the rip. And, yes, that's pretty common for a lot of teenagers, especially a 17-year-old. But I've always been like the mom, like, I don't care what other parents are doing. Like, that is not a reflection on the rules that I have created for Melina. And the thing is like, I know my kid. It's my kid. And I know, like, kind of the boundaries and the rules and the discipline and the structure that is required for her to stay on task, to stay moving forward, to stay productive. A kid with neurodivergency, ADHD, or I myself am a neurodivergent also, and so is my son. So, I understand what can happen when, you become destabilized, especially with school and as a teenager at that time. And so I was trying to communicate that with his parents. They got very defensive kind of right up off the rip, which was frustrating as well. And I think because maybe Jake hasn't dated anybody very seriously before or whatnot, I'm not sure. It was hard to communicate, it was hard to communicate. Not so much with his mom, but with his dad, and frustrating experience when you can't communicate and people have a different standard for their homes and what they'll allow and not allow in their homes with teenagers and stuff. And even like from their perspective, it was Melina's responsibility. But from my perspective, it was like, well, Melina's a child and you're an adult and she's in your home. And so if she's supposed to be home on time, then you're responsible. And if you don't want to handle that responsibility, then don't allow her in your home. To me, that felt very reasonable. And I ran it by a couple other people, including my therapist and her doctor, and they agreed as well. And then, this went on for several weeks as well. And then at one point, I think it was Jake's mom said something to me about, like, Melina said something about, like, you being bipolar. So I said, excuse me? What? And I was just more taken aback by the fact that she was leveraging that as like kind of a way to insult me. It's like, well, I was like, well, I'm not that, but if I was, that's really not cool. Like, it's very unkind that you would even weaponize somebody's, medical, emotional diagnosis because you're upset that I'm calling you out for not respecting the rules that I've put in place for my kid. It's pretty reasonable that I don't want my teenage daughter sleeping at your house. And I am holding Melina accountable, but if she's in your home, then I also have a right to hold you accountable. And Melina's going through something right now, and when Melina gets the opportunity to not follow the rules, if she's tempted or whatever it is that she's doing is, something that's motivating her more than following the rules, then she's likely to do that. And that would be the case for a lot of teenagers too. But it definitely gave me some insight into how people are of my generation with their teenagers. And it definitely opened my eyes a little bit and had me start to understand and take a look at the generation of like 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, like the generation coming up behind mine of like early 80s babies and stuff like that. When you have a generation like mine that is kind of like developed a sense of entitlement and not super productive, and we're probably the first generation, I think, of like latchkey kids and two parents working and not being in the home, and starting to notice and have more language around dysfunctional families and narcissism and codependencies and addictions, and depression and BPD or other neurodivergency, all those things, and so people are more common just to like be able to throw those things around as weapons because there's the language around it, right? But I think overall, too, that has been another source of, I don't know if it's like triggering or judgment that I have received, whatever standard that I'm trying to hold up for myself, that somebody takes offense to it. And it's like, this has really nothing to do with you per se. I have to hold you accountable because you're hosting my child. Like, we wouldn't even be having this conversation if you weren't making the decision to host my child in your home. In general, it was kind of representative in that moment of what our society and culture sort of embraces more so than communication and accountability and compassion. Working together, it's almost like having integrity, trying to communicate. It's no surprise to me that my daughter says that it's embarrassing when I would want to like talk to the parents where she was going and stuff, because not many do that. My experience was like, that did kind of, for her, it would kind of make me look weird that I wanted to do that. But to me, it's like, that's my kid. Why wouldn't I do that? And it's frustrating because what it does is, like, the more people that embrace that sort of ideology of not being direct, not communicating, weaponizing language or making assumptions or gossiping, all of that, or just, you know, talking negatively about people behind their back, especially if their children are around, that just breeds really negative energy. You know, it spreads like a parasite. And I'm not saying that's directly to, you know, Jake's, my daughter's boyfriend's parents. That's just in general. But it kind of gave me a better snapshot, a close look at the overall picture of some of the struggles that I have in certain environments and around certain energies. And then the projection onto me because I'm holding somebody accountable, or because I am speaking truth and you just don't like the truth that I'm speaking. And instead of respecting whatever it is that I'm asking of you that involves me and my home, my kids, you know, it's like, I'm not asking you to do something for you. You can live your life however you want, and I won't judge you for it. When it comes to my kids and my home, though, I get to make those decisions because that's what's in the best interest of my kids and my home. And as a single mom, especially of 2 neurodivergent kids, you know, keeping that balance is very important. Keeping, you know, your home structurally sound and making sure the energy within it is healthy and rules are being respected, boundaries are being respected is super important to the integral part of my family. When I talked to my daughter later about that, my daughter had said that that was something that she heard from my mother. And of course I made my daughter call Jake's mom and apologize, and because she had communicated that to Jake's mom, and I apologized to her too. And again, I have nothing against parents. I think they're good people. It wasn't personal at all in terms of, you know, personality and all of that. I think they're very nice. They're good people, and Jake's a good kid. You know, when you're trying to create changes for yourself and having lived through the experience and the obstacles and the challenges and the dangers and things that I was exposed to from not having any structure, any discipline, any attention, any care, concern, and all of the things that I had to, you know, go through experiences to learn. It's like nobody's going to change my mind about not wanting that for my kids. You know, it's like, okay, so if I have to piss off a few people and hold a standard and stand my ground on that, then if that upsets parents of kids my daughter hangs out with, then so be it. I'd rather them be mad at me than have my daughter go through the things that I went through. It's very difficult to explain to people that are very unhealed. Definitely a narcissist, you'll never be able to explain it to them, but like outside people understanding that, you know, true forgiveness is about you. And when you have released yourself of whatever pain or trauma, whatever somebody did to you or caused for you, you know, when I told my mother I forgave her, I did. Truly, I let it go. Like long before we even sat down and talked, I had already let it go. Again, though, my initial fears of her holding a belief that we were going to be able to recreate a relationship in the future, you know, she was kind of proving that to be true. I don't know what to do in the moment. And life is a learning experience. And to me, as my daughter being a teenager and my son, you know, loving my mom, and, you know, William loves everybody, but I had to make that decision and walk that fine line around not allowing my children to have a relationship with my mother either. Until you are in the position of being the target of a covert narcissist, an aged one especially, you know, until you sit in the position of somebody who has been psychologically and emotionally abused, intentionally traumatized, repeatedly, and you really shouldn't judge what that's like for me or for anybody that's gone through that experience. It's not our obligation to explain it to people either, especially if you're a recovering avoidant or recovering anxiously attached person or codependent. It's all the same. If you're recovering and healing from that for yourself, the expectations that people have that like you owe them an explanation because you're choosing to allow someone to gossip, to speak negatively about that person, that's a lesson for those people to learn. Like if my mother goes to a holiday that I'm not present for, she's choosing to speak about me with people that are there, whether it's my nieces, my brothers, my sister-in-laws, whomever it is, the seed of fear, the witchcraft and the gossip, that's being implanted into them. That's not being implanted into me. That's being implanted into them. And my mother is very, very subtle, and she plays the long game, as you can clearly see here, just based on everything I've told you so far. For any covert narcissist, it's always about the mask that they wear. And like they are eternally bound to nobody ever finding out who they truly are. So, they have to hold up the perception by creating the perception. Wearing a costume that is built off of lies, right? Like if you're holding up the costume of being like a devout, super religious, holier than thou praying, but meanwhile you've sacrificed another human, you have intentionally lied, you've done very bad things that you've been keeping hidden, buried in the back skeletons in your closet for decades or longer, and you're forever just making sure that always stays hidden, is contingent on making sure that nobody ever sees through the cracks into that closet. So you constantly, it's very slight, you constantly have to be planting those seeds. And it's not about creating fear around anyone. We learn from narcissists that, God trains us. God trains us through psychopaths and narcissists, and there's always a lesson there. And until you make that choice to not receive seeds of fear planted by other people projecting that at you or spinning false narratives, or, and ultimately what it is it's controlling you. It's not controlling their victim, whether the victim is recovering or not. I'm coaching anyone or through my teachings, understanding how karma and spiritual law and natural law and laws of the universe, how all of that works, and how it ultimately, regardless of whatever situation, whatever position you're playing in any situation, how there's always a lesson for you to learn there. Somebody being a perpetual cheater, and then you have the spouse that's perpetually being cheated on, especially if the cheater is a narcissist, they're going to come up with whatever excuse or perception they can so they don't look like the villain forever. I still have some doing it in my life currently, and I haven't been around any of these people in years and years and years. It's still a part of the mask that they wear. It's a part of the shell that keeps their insecurities hidden. And so I teach people, though, like, that is for you to learn how you're damaging yourself and how your reflection is partially them. And they're keeping you from your path, your purpose, because there's a certain level of insecurity within you that would be around people that are degrading, that are gossiping about other people, that are lying about other people, or worse, like in what's happened to me, likely dragging you into some criminal behavior. And it's unfortunate that people will invest things in lies and untruths. And if, in the case of myself or with anyone else, and this is happening to several of the people, I've seen it on social media. Now, I don't know how much of what I see is truth or not, because again, I think like my whole phone is artificial intelligence. I'm going to show you. Very curated. There's so much. It's like hard to tell what's real news and what's fake news, but I'll see somebody hear a story, or there's some kind of like scandal or controversy, whether it's with a celebrity or another influencer or whatever it is, and this is how magic works. This is voodoo and black magic. People have a vast misconception of what that means, but this is a part of how they create chaos magic. Pay attention, watch, you can verify what I'm going to say right now. Especially in news media, they will say something without ever giving any verifiable evidence of it to be true. And it's very one-sided. It's very one-sided. So somebody is, they say, potentially a suspect in a crime. And then the news media gets a hold of that, and you think it's like, oh, they're giving you accurate information, and they start running with that story. Most of it is not true. It perpetuates the spread of misinformation. Or if it just starts off as one thing, as it continues to snowball, it gets more and more cloudy. It gets filled with more and more dirt. And what people believe is happening is that, unless they know the truth and they're doing this, which a lot of them are doing it intentionally, believe it or not, but what they're doing is they're planting seeds of fear in anyone that accepts it as truth. There's a whole group of individuals that are, whether they're connected to what happened to me or not is unclear to me, but I have definitely seen this happen, especially with artificial intelligence. Altering of voices and artificial intelligence around voices, like, I just cannot believe that this is being allowed to go on. Like, it's so scary to me because I don't think people realize how quickly this is going to snowball out of control. But can do a deep fake on an image of someone, create a video of someone, do a deep fake on a text message or a voicemail, and then share just that and then create a whole narrative around it. And maybe they didn't realize until now, but I'm here to tell you, at least from my experience, I'm locked in a digital cage. So I have no idea what the narrative has been run with. In the public, on my social platforms, I have seriously no idea. And so what appeared to be happening is that then whatever like little culty network they have around them, whatever traumatized, hate-filled group that's like acting out, which is basically what's happening in some of these hedonistic, the witchy covens and just the hate groups, and they can mask behind a religion. They're creating division, but what they are is they're running with misinformation, spreading misinformation. Guys, what they're doing is they're sacrificing people, damaging the character and the reputation of another person with no facts. Read false information. Like, I have no idea. To me, it seems so extreme and so strange that this is happening, that it's being allowed to go on social media as well. It's and maybe it is just a financial thing, like the clickbait and rage bait. It's a way for them to just spread misinformation in order to create some kind of sense of upset that they can then monetize or whatever. I don't know. It's so weird to me. It's not a part of my world, so I don't really understand it, but I understand it from the macro perspective to see how it's wrong. Maybe it'll be my lawsuit or whatever class action lawsuit happens that influencers start getting sued for spreading of misinformation that was generated from artificial intelligence, are making commentary around very serious situations, and they're doing like full-blown like medical diagnoses on the characters that are within a story and all of that. And it's like, people will throw words around too, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, you realize you could get sued for slander, right? And defamation of character? I truly don't understand it. But the other piece of this is that there are people in the kingdom of heaven and God's warriors, chosen ones, whatever, spiritual leaders, prophets, all of that. They are being appointed and moved into their purpose. It's not just me. There's quite a few people that are really starting to see what their purpose in this world truly is. It's starting to come into focus for a lot of people. And if someone has cleared their karma, if they have learned the spiritual lessons to be able to walk their mission in the way that God has designed for them to do, and like with this group of people, I can assure you that they're all getting hellacious karma. I mean, that is truly how you get a hand-delivered curse by God to a group, a media group or something that stole money from a minister who's anointed and who's in her purpose, or you slandered or defamed my name. Like, I never worry because I know how protected I am by God. And yes, it's frustrating, but it's not, to me, it just seems like so pointless. It's like meaningless to see people. Yes, they need to learn their lessons, but to see so many people end up being affected by the choices and decisions of masterminds of like really dumb plots and plans, and not have any of these fools try to pump the brakes, try to pull the e-brake, try to actually come speak to me and understand the truth. And what in really the opposite of that, it seems to have continued to like snowball to the point that we're at now. And what I don't know if it's just because they're particularly stubborn, or just ignorant or entitled, audastic. I don't know financially how much they've stolen. Again, this has been going on for damn near almost 2 years now. So I haven't even been able to have contact with anybody from PayPal, Cash App, the Federal Reserve, the federal government, despite me continuously reaching out and trying to get some advocacy or assistance. So, you know, if they have had control over my platforms and they're just all living off of it, you know, I know that there's a brand that's AMP, and I don't know if the people are behind that. I mean, AMP is my initials, and so I don't know who owns that or what, but, you know, even that seems like it's it's walking the line. You know, the AMP House, where did they come up with that? If they are trying to make investments through my business because they're trying to run my business as me, the hologram that they created of me, that's a possibility. I have no idea. I know it's very weird. Nobody continues to go to these efforts for no reason. And so either they are really afraid of the amount of crimes that they've committed, they've really invested a lot of money, or they're just all very deeply concerned about being found out about how truly evil and diabolical and hateful they are. And or they've committed other crimes similar to what has happened to me, or they're a part of some of the crimes that have happened more recently, other hate crimes, which is quite possible. Keep hiring practitioners to do ending magic and rituals on me, and the amount of death magic and voodoo that these people and witchcraft that these people have sent at me is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I am going to share what that looks like, and from the perspective of a person they wanted to make a victim, what it is like to experience that, so people know. But it's going to be unsuccessful. And what they don't understand is when you're doing that to somebody who's truly protected, and any true practitioner, not that I agree with it, but you understand that there's a level of respect, because those people, the ones that are actually real, like the old school, the elders, and those type of environments in the occultic communities or whatever, they understand the dangers in trying to do any kind of dark practices, any kind of that, even what do they call it, Akashic record viewing, or remote viewing, and all of that. That is disrespectful to a sacred being. To the long and the short of it is like, you could get yourself invested in something and be programmed or hypnotized or have magic done on you. The humiliation rituals that everybody talks about, which initially I thought maybe as this got more and more aggressive, I thought maybe that was their intention or whatever. I couldn't understand why they would want to do that to me, but I thought potentially, just based on my observation of what was happening in my reality and understanding the energy that they were trying to surround me with. But they summon demons, create trauma for other people that are closest to them, whether it be their spouses, their children, their followers, their network, their church, whatever it is. They create trauma for them, and then whatever demons that they're calling on, they use those demons to latch onto the trauma of their own people, their followers. And so they work as like little soldiers or flying monkeys. That is the concept of a dark witch. They're little foot soldiers to go out and inherit the brunt of whatever it is they're doing. So if they have them committing crimes, if they have them gang stalking, if whatever they have them doing, and then they'll give them little breadcrumbs for being their foot soldier. It's a crappy apartment to live in, or a crappy car to drive, or a gift card, whatever it is. That's the work that they do. But these people have been covered in voodoo and dark magic and are being controlled by whatever demonic spirits or entities that they're calling on. That's what they actually do. It's not about creating fear. It's about creating an opportunity for healing and hope. Most importantly, an opportunity to align with truth and integrity. And we all have an equal opportunity to do that.